we know there's different strategies to employ. You hear a lot of these terminologies that we say in the fantasy community. There's zero RB, there's hero RB, and there's robust RB. And Mr. Robust RB himself, Dave Richard, loves running backs more than anybody else. So Dave, let's talk about what it means to go heavy at the running back position and take a lot of them. If you see our Fantasy Football Today podcast, I don't know if you're in on the joke yet or not, but Adam has a draft board behind him, and he has an entire draft team for you, and it's all running backs.
What a punk.
So you like a lot of running backs. How many do you like to take in a PPR league through, let's say, the first 8 rounds?
Through the first 8 rounds, I'd love to have at least 4. And it doesn't mean that I'm going running back with my first 4 picks. And it also depends on where the pick is, because a lot of the top tier running backs, they obviously go at the top of the draft. When I'm in the back end of round 1, I'm okay waiting on running back there this year because there's so many good talent, there's so many other talented players at wide receiver and tight end. But yes, I think you really need to look at your rank list for running backs. And when you get to David Montgomery, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, really the guys that are in tier 4, maybe Montgomery doesn't belong in that list. And if you get squeamish looking at the names that are on your screen right now, then you need to take running backs early in your draft. But if you look at these names and you go, yeah, I think I can get by with J.K. Dobbins or Josh Jacobs. These are running backs that are flawed in some way. Some of them are flawed in multiple ways. But if you think you're okay getting them and starting them, then you wait on running back a little bit and you take wide receivers or a stud tight end with your first few picks. I like to take running backs early. They traditionally score more points than wide receivers in fantasy football, even in full PPR, when they're right. The problem is that we've seen a lot in the past few years that running backs get hurt, they miss time, so they are a little bit fragile, but when they're good, they're great, and you're going to the playoffs with league winners.
You got to hope they stay healthy. That's the biggest key. And what you see on your screen here, I think, for people that aren't necessarily familiar with it, tier does not mean round. And so these are not the rounds you're taking these guys.
Yes.
This is just the range that you're taking these guys. And it's basically just grouping a list of ranking. For Dave, that's his rankings at the running back position. All right, so there's the go heavy at the running back spot. Heath, I'm going to give you the other side of this. The zero RB strategy, which typically means avoiding drafting running backs until around round 7. Some people say round 6, but you want to kind of get, especially in a 3-receiver league, your receivers locked up, your flex locked up, your quarterback and your tight end locked up, so your first 6 picks. So when you go this route, which is the group of running backs, the tier, maybe you want to put it that way, but the kind of guys that you're looking at, that you could be looking at your RB1 and your RB2 if you don't take a running back early?
And this really can vary wildly depending on your drafts. I'm going to try to not talk too much about our drafts, but I do think you will see guys like Tony Pollard and A.J. Dillon mixed in with guys who are starters who we aren't quite as excited about, like Elijah Mitchell, maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chase Edmonds. Dameon Pierce has been there, probably not for long. Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, those types of guys. What I want to do is I want a good mix of the upside weekly guys, and I think that Penny definitely falls into that group, but also Pollard and Dillon and Kareem Hunt fall into that group because they could be flexes with the starter healthy, and they could be top 10 running backs if the starter gets hurt. But I also want a couple of guys that I feel pretty good about starting week 1. Now, Penny's in that group, but also a guy like Nyheim Hines. If you've stacked upside around him, Hines could be in full PPR a nice low-end number 2 running back or high-end number 3. So you get a good mix of the pass-catching floor guys and the guys who would be high upside, and then just stockpile as many handcuffs as you can get. Guys like Khalil Herbert, Alexander Madison, and that group.
Yeah, you need some potential league winners to really pull this off if your wide receivers don't go to the level that you hope they go to. And we'll show you an example of this. Dave Richard actually did this in a draft we did on Tuesday night. This was a half PPR mock draft where Dave did not take a running back with his first 6 picks. And so he implored this strategy and I think did it very well. Your first 2 rounds were Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams. Then you went Cortland Sutton and Michael Thomas. So you got your 3 receivers. It's a 3-receiver league. And your flex. Then you took your quarterback in Justin Herbert and your tight end in Dalton Schultz. And then you see what the running backs look like. And I think as Heath sort of put it, every league will vary wildly. I think you did a nice job here, Dave, of getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Devin Singletary. They're not the most exciting running backs, but they're starters on teams that are going to score a lot of points. And if things work out well for them where they're not coming off the field in the situations that we like them coming off the field, in passing down situations at the goal line, you can be really good. And then you threw a lot of capital at it. You took your next, I think it was like 4 of your next 6 picks at running back after those 2.
I was dared to do this. And, it's like trying a vegetable for the first time. You want to know if you actually like it. And picking late, I kind of liked it. It really wasn't that bad because I was okay saying, well, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Devin Singletary are my starting running backs, I know that they're going to be the starting running backs for their teams. They could lead their teams in rushing touchdowns. And I'm loaded everywhere else. Like, I barely even bothered getting other wide receivers because I love the 4 that I got. I'm never going to bench them. At the time, I really loved Dalton Schultz. Now I've cooled a little bit because of the Tyron Smith news. And you know how I feel about Justin Herbert. I like him better than Patrick Mahomes. So I'm just hoping that I can get by for the first month of the season with Edwards-Helaire and Singletary. If they're great, then I don't have to worry about filling their spots. But I've got to work the waiver wire in September and October to try and find this year's James Conner or 2 years ago James Robinson. You've got to commit to that if you go 0 RB. You can't just draft a team and say, that's it, I'm done, and what I get is what I get. Don't do that. You've got to pay attention to waivers and do well on it all year long.